Now, given the fact that the Hanwei factory finally closed down, Katana made an announcement that Hanwei, the iconic Hanwei factory that pretty much originated Katana as we know it, they were a big player in the production market as far as recreating Katana. If it wasn't for the efforts of Paul Chen and Hanwei and all the skilled artisans involved for 30 years of developing this product, we wouldn't have these recreations of these katana that we have today. There's so many brands of Hanwei that are just such amazing swords. Whether you love them or hate them, they're definitely part of our modern history in terms of these recreations of swords. And I think, honestly, a company like Hanwei led the way even for other companies to kind of jump on board and just spark the interest of people in terms of a historical presence of these swords in modern times. And Hanwei was a big part of it. I'm not saying they were the only ones. It was Ronin. There are other players involved, but Hanwei was definitely a big part of it. And to see that they finally closed doors, it's the death of an icon, the death of a legendary forge that really started so much and put the ball in motion for so many of these recreated swords. Right, Practical XL. I've done a million videos of this. About this sword, cutting videos, dramatic cinematic videos. I love this sword. It's probably one of my first production model swords I was able to get my hands on. If I had to basically owe this to anybody, I owe it to a lot of people. Matthew Jensen, I mentioned a million times, but someone that I mentioned from time to time, but I should mention more often, Ken, the Backyard Samurai. He's the backyard knife dude. He loved his Practical XL. He had the original, the OG Practical XL, and he did some amazing cuts and amazing things with it. And after I saw him kind of playing with his Practical XL, I said, oh, you know what, I got to get this sword. So after a year and a half trying to get this thing, it's finally, I was able to get it from a company, and it's just, I've loved it ever since. I'm going to do a last sharpening session of this sword. I have to fix a couple little chips of kind of just because I abused the shit out of this thing. I've done so much with this sword. I think I hit it into some stone at some point. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but I got a couple of chips over it at the Kasaki. Blade took a set a million times, bent it back. I mean, this thing just is a beast. It just wants to keep on going and going. So I'm going to give it a little TLC, a little new sharpening session, fix up a couple of the chips, clean this up a little bit, polish up the edge. This may be a project that I may do, maybe fix this up a little bit in time. I may do some ceremonial last cuts, and then I'm going to retire it. I'm going to officially retire my Practical XL, retire it from action until further notice. It may not be forever. Seeing that Hanwei factory is closing down, I want to kind of retire the Practical XL and preserve it as much as humanly possible. Being the first owner and the only owner, the last owner of one of this Practical XL, it's an oddity because it's very hard to get them these days. Brand new. I don't even know if they can stock them anymore. The future is bright. I spoke to you about it in my last video, my live. We'll speak about it again. But for now, I am going to do a sharpening session with this Practical XL. And this was also an opportunity that I can actually show you some sharpening methods with the WORKSHARP. From time to time, everybody asks me, like, you know, how do you sharpen your swords? Can you do more of an instructional video? It's hard to do an instructional video, and you want to make it too long. This is already long as it is, but I'll try to give you some pointers as far as what I use with the belts and how I hold it, how I tape it up and prep it up. More semi-detailed sharpening video of a sword, and I'll show you how this works on the WORKSHARP. This is the WORKSHARP from Ken Onion, and this right here is a blade grind attachment. I like this because I'm able to do freehand basically on the belt. And just having this freehand, you're able to kind of guide it to where you need to go, and you just feel like you have a little bit more control. I think that's just the best way to cut, to sharpen swords and big knives and things like that, is to have the freehand with these belts, which you'll see. That's what it looks like. Brand new. These are all the belts that it comes with. So what we're going to do is, the specimen is going to be my Practical XL. Now, as you can see, I did tape up the whole sword with the a sword's best friend, blue painter's tape, to protect the blade. Whenever you have a blade that you want to protect the finish of the blade without scratching it up with the belts, you want to put this blue tape on it and only expose the part where you're going to be sharpening the edge. So obviously you don't want to cover up the edge, but cover up as much of the blade as possible so you can protect the hamon or any of the normal factory finish that you want to protect on the blade. That's how you do it with this Ken Onion, is to tape up the blade. They don't tell you that, but that's what you need to do, and it does work. Even though I got to tell you, the finish on this blade after all the cutting that I did with it, I don't know how Hanwei did the finish on this. It's like a stonewash finish. You don't see any scratches or anything. It's really pretty damn amazing. But here is basically what I want to fix towards the bottom right there. You see that little cut, that little breakage, okay, on the Kasaki there? I must have hit into a stone at some point, but that's pretty much all that's wrong with this thing. And I gotta tell you, I did so much cutting with this thing, it must have just basically struck like a cinder block on a downward cut or something like that, if I recall, because I broke a stand and then it went down and hit like a cinder block. I think that's where I got that little indentation there, and that's really all I got, which is pretty damn amazing. It's not even that deep, so I'm going to try to see if I can fix this part here with one of the coarser belts. So we're probably going to go with like the P120. That is only supposed to be used. Okay, this is a very, very coarse P120 belt. This belt should only be used for like damaged, fixing up damaged blades. So, and that's basically what I'm doing. I rarely use this because I don't really need to unless you're fixing up chips or anything like that on the blade itself. You can see how it's actually even new, and you see how coarse it is when you hold it in the light. But this is a P120. It's a 120 grit, and I'm going to try to work on the Kasaki first, and then we'll work on the rest of the blade. So let's see if we can't make this a 5-hour long video. I'll speed it up where I can. Since it plays, it goes around the wheels right over here, and you can see basically how to unloosen it. You just basically, it's very easy to kind of unloosen. You take the spring, hit it into place, and it'll be a little loud, but you have to use this knob to kind of center the belt. You make sure the belt is basically centered, and also the angle. You can set up the angle of this, okay? And the angle I had set up to about 18. I don't want to make it too fine of an edge. I made it about 18 because it is more of a rough cutter, so I don't want to make it too fine of an edge, so I can cut eventually, you know, if I ever want to cut with it again, some harder material. So I set it to about an 18, which is kind of pushing it, but 18 is pretty good for a katana when you want to cut bamboo and stuff like that. It's not too fine of an edge. So we set it at 18 for the fix on the Kasaki, and also the rest of the blade we'll keep it at a solid 18. Just we have to take some metal off so we can kind of just you know, get rid of that chip, and then we're going to do a regular profiling. So that's basically what we're doing right now. But normally you don't go back and forth like this, but that's only when you want to take some metal off the blade. We fixed up the Kasaki. Now the next thing we're going to do is put down the very extra coarse one. Now we're going to start going up in the grit a little finer. This is a 220. The next 65 it's a 220. We're going to do 5 belts, okay? 220, a 1000, a 3000, and a 6000. I believe that's what it is. X65 is a 220. We're going to do the whole sword on the 220, including the Kasaki again, because that's how we're going to bring it back to its sharpness. Right now we took the metal off. We kind of brought it together, took away the chips. Now it's just got to be refined with all 5 belts up until the extra fine belt, and then we should have a pretty sharp ass freaking sword. A 90-degree angle, so you put it onto the belt straight. So this has a balancing beam here. So you put it on here first. You have to go to probably about an inch off the Kasaki. You don't need to sharpen anything closer to that. An inch, inch and a half is fine. You start right there and just keep it, you know, even stroke. I'm hoping you can hear me over the belt. And you don't have to worry about pressing down or letting the belt hit because it is covered with the blue tape. Normal pace, try to keep it steady. It's a big sword. But you want to try to keep it as straight as possible. Angle it up. There you go, there's one pass. Start lifting it as you get to the tip. Lift it just with your shoulder, not your wrist. Your right shoulder up as you get closer to the tip. And stop it before the tip goes all the way over. You don't want to roll it over. So about 6 passes, you want to basically feel a burr. You want to feel a lift. Okay, you see it's smooth on this side, and you want to feel like a lift in the edge, like the edge is being rolled over this way. Okay, and if you feel the edge, that means you got the burr. You got a burr going. So at 6 passes, I'm already good to go. So I may only have to go, maybe I'll go with 2 passes just to really get a nice burr going on all of it. So I'm going to go with like maybe 2 more passes here and make it an even 8. It's important that you count your passes. So basically you got a good burr going around the entire edge, all the way up into the Kasaki, which is good because you really want to get a burr going here because you want to even this out as much as possible after you fix it. So once you have the roll there, now you turn it to the other side and you roll it to that side and make the ends kind of meet as a point. And that's the whole point of how you sharpen them. 8 passes on each side. So if you have 8 passes on one side, you have to follow up with exactly the same amount of 8 passes on the other side and try to keep it same speed, same consistency as much as possible. So now we're going to flip the sword to this side and we're going to run it through opposite side. It takes practice, but once you learn the finesse and learn the movements, you never move your wrist. You always move your shoulder, okay? All right, so we finish up with the coarse belts, okay? And I can see basically there's a lot of burr, obviously a lot of lifted metal that wants to be taken off. You have to go through all the belts. You have to go with all the way up into the ultra fine belts before you really see a good sharp edge out of this work sharp. Because once you do the coarse belts, it doesn't make it sharp. You got to go with the extra fine belts in order to basically fine tune and hone up the edge, take off any burr that's remaining. You notice that there's no chip here. The chip was fixed. Any other micro chips were probably fixed while I was doing the sharpening, so it's a double whammy, so it fixes everything up. Yeah, this is the medium belt. Then we're going to go with the fine belt, okay, which is probably around 3,000 grit, and then we're going to go with the extra fine belt, which is going to be about 6,000 grit. We're going to do the same amount of passes pretty much on all of it. That's usually how I do it, unless I see it doesn't need it. So, but I'm going to try to keep it around 6 to 8 passes on each belt for the most part until I get to the extra fine belt. Now, as you go with the finer and finer belt, basically you're taking off any burr or any like metal foulings that are on the blade. So you're getting rid of all of that as you go with the finer and finer belt. No, we went with a fine belt and now we're going with the extra fine belt right here. And the important thing is, guys, is to go by the touch. You got to go by the touch to see how many passes you think you may need. You have to basically get a feel for the edge and see how many passes you think you may need. And with some practice, this kind of becomes native to you and you know how many passes you're going to need. So what I did was, I did about 8 passes on the fine belt. I may only have to do about 7 passes because this is already screaming sharp and you don't want to make it too fine or too brittle. So we're probably going to go about 6 or 7 passes. I can see the edge is actually gleaming already. So you have to go by the feel and go with the amount of passes that you think you need. The manual gives you a little guidance, but you definitely have to go with your feeling, okay, to know how many passes you're going to go with. So basically flatten it out, start with about 1.5 inches. Keep the wrist straight at all times. Always keep the wrist straight. Keep the pressure on the blade itself and lift with the shoulder. So lift with your right shoulder, the opposite shoulder as you get to the point. Don't roll the point. Take it off before the point rolls off the belt. The leg work is good too. You want to keep your waist at a place where basically where the point is going to end up, you want to be ready to be able to stay straight throughout the entire length. It takes some challenge, takes some practice, but you get used to it. So again, lift with the right, keep the pressure with your left hand right on the blade at all times, so you basically keep it on the belt. And then just glide it on the belt and let the belt do the work, you know? Angle it. Always keep the left side down So you're always pushing the edge right onto the belt. Very important to keep it the same level as much as possible, and always keep it kind of with pressure on the belt. Not too much pressure. Lift again with the right shoulder, and keep the wrist always flat. Always keep the right wrist flat. I believe this is 4. I think I'm going to stay with 6. We're going to go with 6 now. Turn the sword around and do exactly the same thing on the other side. Different parts of your body, different hands doing different things. You just got to kind of get that muscle memory going, so you do the same thing on each side, because you're using different type of, you're depending on which side of your body is dominant. You got to kind of be consistent on each side and train the less dominant part of your body to do the same motions that the dominant part of your body is doing. Hope that makes a little sense to you. It's the best way that I can kind of describe it to you. It's been hard for me to kind of teach people how I sharpen, because everybody has their own particular way of what works for them. Yeah. That's the fine metal dust, and that's actually the metal filings that came off just from this cutting session. It's actually spread out throughout the whole box. I can probably get more, make a bigger pile, but you get the idea. It's like a fine metal dust. Okay, like I said, I'm wondering if I save this all in a bag, and maybe I can kind of make another sword from these metal filings. I guess from a lifetime of doing it, kind of build up. But yeah, you definitely want to kind of clean this up and just get all of the metal filings off and keep it clean before you put it away. Clean the belt if possible. Clean, as much as you can, just to keep it nice and fresh for the next cutting session. Sharpening is done. The belts are put away. The sharpener's put away. It's all dusted up. I still have the blue tape on here. Now you want to do a feel test. Well, you want to do that many times, but you feel after the extra fine, this is screaming sharp, like to the point where it's just refined. It's a refined sharpness. No chips on the Kasaki. The old Kasaki looks beautiful. Look how the edge is kind of just gleaming off the light and stuff. It's hard to see with the tape, but it's just no micro abrasions, just a perfectly fine, straight, beautifully sharp edge, ready and ripe for cutting everything you need to cut with it. Nice fine, nice robust 18 angle bevel, so it's not too fine, and it's ready just to basically to do what a big, big beefy blade like this is going to do, is just kind of destroy like hard material. So next step. Okay, the blue tape really did the trick. The edge is perfectly sharp, and the rest of the blade, there's no surface scratches or anything like that. You avoided basically the belts kind of marring up the rest of the blade, so it's still got a really beautiful finish. Now, this is years old, guys, and this has been through a lot of cutting, and it's just still, the edge is still, the surface area of the blade is still pretty damn good. So now we're going to kind of clean this up a little bit, spray this all the way up with some alcohol spray here, and just very carefully kind of just bring it up and down the blade, and just get rid of any of the blackness that's still there on the edge. The rest of the blade should be pretty clean because we had it covered up. And just clean it all the way up. Really press onto the edge there as you clean it, so this way you get rid of any of the black metal dust and filings that are still on the blade. But from what I see, the tape really did the trick, because it's really beautifully protected, and I don't see any scratches or any belt scratches other than the normal cutting scratches it's gotten. So all right, so after sharpening this thing up, now we're going to take it to the spa. So this is the Mother's Meg, okay, metal polish. And what I do is take a toothbrush. The way I like to do it is I take a toothbrush and I kind of just dab the toothbrush on here and really just go over the whole surface area of the blade. You want to keep away from the point as much as humanly possible, because you don't want to take any metal off a freshly sharpened point that you just did. But you want to definitely try to really Be generous as far as spreading it all around the whole blade, including the spine. Don't forget about the spine, and try to keep away from the point or the ha as much as possible. And just be generous with it all along. And I like the toothbrush method because it's a way to kind of brush it or stroke it right into the metal, and you don't have to waste too much paper doing it that way. And just, it's almost like you're just painting it on there, you know? And there's a lot of blade here. This is a thick ass blade. This is a wide blade, if you guys haven't noticed already. It's a very wide blade on this Practical XL, so there's a lot of surface area, a lot of blade that you got to kind of get to, because it's almost the same width from the Motohabe all the way up to the Kasaki. It's almost around the same width, if you guys haven't noticed that already. So that's pretty much it. You see, basically you have the metal polish along the whole surface area of the blade, the mune as well, and trying to keep away from the ha or the point as much as possible. So let that sit for a little bit, for a couple minutes. In the meantime, just kind of you know, clean up your brush, because you want to be able to use this brush over and over again. You just take off the surface, and sometimes I even actually spray it a little bit with alcohol just to clean it up a little more, and then just wipe away any of the residue. So this way you're able to use the same brush over and over again. And there you go. So it doesn't dry up on the brush. You put it away in its own little baggie, and it's ready to go for the next time you need to use it. Just make sure you don't brush your teeth with it. Now what you want to do is you want to take a good absorbing, you know, tough cloth. Try to use a soft cloth as opposed to a paper towel. Maybe like one of these hard soft cloths. Maybe these the shop towels are pretty good. And just kind of stroke it up, okay? And just kind of just rub the metal polish into it all the way to the tip. Okay, and you're going to see how much black. The black is actually the metal that's coming off. That's what the black is. It's the metal that's coming off the blade. And just kind of stroke it right in, all the way up. You can see the metal coming off the blade. And if necessary, try to go with another piece of paper, or maybe just turn it over a little bit. It can get messy. It's a messy job, but somebody's got to do it. Can you do it until you don't see any more black? What you're going to have to do after you do a little of this is also spray it with alcohol, and that's how you really get all of the black residue from the metal polish off. Look how the damn thing is shining, okay, from the metal polish. It really does a nice job, this Mother's Meg. Take the alcohol again, spray up the blade, get all the surface area of the blade all covered up nice. Take another clean towel and just really rub that alcohol in there. Get the point, get the mune, get in between the crack of the kabaki. Just make sure you get all of it. And you can see basically how much black. You can see how much black is coming off by doing the alcohol. The alcohol is just the finishing touch of really taking off anything that's on the blade. It doesn't look like it's on there, but it is on there. It's pretty crazy. You might have to just spend a little time kind of just really rubbing in until the napkin has pretty much no black on it, and then you know you cleaned it off completely. That's the sign. So you still have a little bit of black on here, but you see how it's getting a lot better. If necessary, you can apply a little bit more alcohol on it, just to know that it's clean. Pretty much almost all white, so you know it's getting there. Yeah, that metal polish is very powerful stuff. Perfectly white, so you know that the sword is perfectly clean. The polish looks awesome. Brought the luster back on the blade. Looks really beautiful. So there you have it, guys. A finished up blade. I mean, look at that sword glimmer. This thing went through a spa treatment today. Wow, this sword really does look good, man. That looks absolutely beautiful. Yeah, this girl needed a little love, for sure. This girl is screaming sharp, guys. Nice sharpening session. And thank you so much for joining me, for helping me retire my Practical XL. But not until we get a couple more cutting sessions in. But this thing is crazy as sharp, okay? You definitely want to run it through all the belts, through those extra fine belts, and it really brings it together. And then you clean it up with that metal polish. This thing is absolutely beautiful. Fix up any chips or any micro abrasions or micro cuts. This is some sort, this Hanwei Practical XL. If you're able to find one, definitely treat yourself to one if you can. If you're able to find one second market, or if by any chance that they're still going to supply you from Cultivatina or from Siberia, see if you can get one of these in your hands, and you will not regret it. But yeah, Practical XL guys from Hanwei. Because of the closing, I wanted to kind of bring us to a nice sharpening session. We'll do some ceremonial last cuts, and then we'll retire this bad girl for a little while because it did a lot of work. It needs a good long vacation. This was an instructional video. I hope this helped you out a little bit. If you have any questions, please let me know about the sharpening, the belts, the grits, the metal polish, or anything like that. But yeah, Hanwei Practical XL, guys. Definitely look for it if you can.